Hello, good afternoon, class. It is your wonderful teacher, Miss Bell, back for another history lesson as always. Now, to continue with the theme of our last class, which I hope y'all remember, was about women in the Civil War, specifically 3 women that were very different yet similar. And today we are going to be talking about the Battle of Antietam and dipping into emancipation. Now, the Battle of Antietam was fought in Washington County, Maryland, and it is known as one of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War, with an estimated 22,700 casualties. Now, casualties does not necessarily mean death. It could mean very severe wounds and battles that very severe wounds and sickness and things that most likely led to death, but typically people think of casualties as death, but it could be death, injury, or capture. So it's all kind of in a lump sum. And with the Civil War, numbers are never exact, typically. And as we discussed that Civil War, it's a very well researched topic. However, it's hard to distinguish different to distinguish exact facts, exact numbers, especially because of how the militaries were set up. The Union was more, I don't want to say legit, but yeah, they had a better system, maybe you could say, although that is argued a lot. The thing about the Civil War history that I love and also don't like is the history of memory over history, where people's memory over an event, and especially the Civil War, something that has been passed down from generation to generation, and that their father told them, their grandfather told their father, and so on and so forth, that facts have sort of got left out, and there's more theory and opinion sometimes when discussing this topic. Although I feel there's one way, somebody else. I know, when I've studied this in my school, when I took classes just like this, there was almost uncertainty, which I didn't understand, but I grew up different than some, and it's just how people's opinions and how they were taught. Now, the Battle of Antietam, it's very well known. Like I said, I have been there, obviously not during the time. I visited there several times, while driving through. Now, it occurred on September 17th, 1862. So if you think about the casualty number, the great number of 22,700 estimated casualties, this was only one day. The major commanders or players involved were Major General George B. McClellan, who was on the side of the Union, or the United States, versus General Robert E. Lee, very well known, of the Confederate States. Now, in September 1862, Confederate General Robert E. Lee left the South and moved his army into Maryland. No one could be sure exactly what he planned to do, but in an incredible stroke of luck, a copy of Lee's plans, which had been wrapped around 3 cigars, were discovered by the Union soldiers and given to Union General George B. McClellan, which gave him great insight into what was to come. Knowing Lee's plans, on September 17th, 1862, McClellan's army attacked Lee's army at Antietam Creek in Maryland. The Battle of Antietam, also called the Battle of Sharpsburg because the town of Sharpsburg is right nearby, was the bloodiest single day in American history. Now, when I say popular or known as, being in the history community as long as I have, some people have different opinions, which is strange because history is fact, but I say it's the beginning of the bloodiest single day in American history, at least in the Civil War. Lee lost about 10,300 men to death, injury, or capture, so that was his side of the casualties, while McClellan lost 12,400 men. However, having limited resources and reinforcements and supplies, Lee was forced to retreat, even though he lost less, and the North declared the Battle of Union victory. But even though that the Union won, they did not continue to chase and fight Lee's army, which became it's still I wouldn't say not controversial topic. It's just one that stayed to this day, that them not following pursuit could have changed the war, could have changed not the outcome, I don't believe, because Union was leading here, but could have maybe ended it sooner, maybe ended it with less casualties on both ends. And now, since Lee and his army got the way, the war did not end here, and more battles were to come. Now, this is off a paper, off the sheets that you should have in front of you, the Civil War curriculum. Goal 3, 1862, Antietam and Emancipation. Now, Emancipation it goes all into it, but the Battle of Antietam is one I wanted to briefly discuss, because it's one that I don't want to say it's favorite. It's one a lot of people study, and it's a single day, and in that single day so much happened. And this battle, the Antietam battle, it was the fuel behind President Abraham Lincoln issuing his preliminary Emancipation Proclamation later that week on September 22nd, 1862. Now, I apologize. I'm going through my papers, and now there were other players in this battle. Obviously, I have talked about McClellan and Lee are the most known, but there also was Officer Hooker, and that was let me read a little more. So, like I said, when on September 16th, Major General George B. McClellan obtained Lee's army's plans of the Northern Virginia at Sharpsburg, Maryland. At dawn the next day, September 17th, Hooker's corps mounted a powerful assault on Lee's flank that began the single bloodiest battle in American military history. I like this much better, American military history, because when I think of bloodiest days in American history, I think of genocides and things like that as discussed. Attacks and counterattacks swept across Miller's cornfield. Now, Miller's cornfield was the battle, so it was actually somebody's property. This was all fought on people's property. This wasn't just some blank field that no one owned. This was someone's property, their farm, their livelihood. There was a church as well. The fighting went across Miller's cornfield, which is my name Miller, or last name Miller, and the fighting swirled around Dunker Church, which was a church, as well as other homesteads. Now, only one I visited, it still stands that I have visited, and Dunker Church itself is gone. The Union assaults against the sunken road eventually pierced the Confederate center, but the Federal advantage was not followed up, as we discussed. Late in the day, Burnside Corps finally got into action, crossing the stone bridge over the Antietam Creek and rolling up the Confederate right. So Burnside is Union, and Hooker is an officer on the other end. At a crucial moment, A.P. Hill's division arrived from Harper's Ferry and counterattacked, driving back Burnside and saving the day. Although outnumbered 2-1, Lee commanded his entire force, while McClellan sent in less than three-quarters of his army, enabling Lee to fight the Federals to a standstill. During the night, both armies consolidated their lines. In spite of crippling casualties, Lee continued to skirmish with McClellan throughout the 18th, while removing his wounded south of the river. McClellan did not renew the assaults, and after dark, Lee ordered the battered Army of Northern Virginia to withdraw across the Potomac River into the Shenandoah Valley, where they were not pursued. Now, in my opinion, I see McClellan's. I want to know your opinions, but I see why McClellan did not follow. He lost more men. He had less he had less. He had less reinforcements, even though he didn't put everyone in, like how Lee put all in. In the end, McClellan lost more by numbers, not percentage, but he didn't have enough to keep going. And after this, there was backlash to him in the Maryland campaign, of which this is also been called, and one of the battles was in the Maryland campaign. Campaign being just going across Maryland and skirmishes and battles. There was a lot of backlash. Lee had backlash. I would say that McClellan maybe had more, because they thought that he could do more, even though it was a victory. To some, was it really a victory? And it's it was a turning tide for the battle, for the war. It could have gone completely one way. It was a 50-50 flop, and I think that's why I studied so much, because so much could have happened, And the Maryland campaign itself was Lee decided to create this new momentum starting in early September. Things could have gone more his way. The reason I think also the Maryland campaign is very important is because for the Confederates to gain independence, they were hoping that this Maryland campaign, that battlefield victories, would help convince England and France to recognize them as an independent nation and receive help, which never did come. But what we will study is that it was kind of teetering on that France and England might eventually come, but they never did. It was also Lee headed to Maryland for supplies, as his men could not really be fed any longer. He was getting to this point in the war, even though it was not near the end. It was getting to this point that both sides, especially Confederacy, were losing fuel for their soldiers to keep going on with. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. It was sort of short. I wanted this to be a short, relaxing lesson as we restart school. It's the end of August. We're approaching September. I wanted this to be very relaxing and comforting to y'all. So, I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much. Come back now.